Now for the story of another beginning and an ending. The inauguration of the new president, the departure of his predecessor. But for both, a day of triumph. We have reports on each. First, White House correspondent Sam Donaldson.
When Ronald Reagan began his day by attending special services at St. John's Church on Lafayette Square, he was still a private citizen, but not for long. To the White House he drove, to be met by the man he was replacing.
Well, I think President-elect and his wife will enjoy the new home.
The Reagans and the Carters going in for a brief cup of coffee. Then up to the Capitol they went, the two men riding together in the same car, heading for the exchange of power. The ceremony was held for the first time before the west front of the Capitol instead of the east, looking down the mall to the Washington Monument and beyond. But even as the two men walked out on the special platform, the suspense over the hostages continued to hang over the moment. Mr. President, are the hostages out?
Can't say yes.
Hang over, but not dominate. Only one event could truly dominate the ceremony at the Capitol on this day.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
May I congratulate you, sir.
Ronald Reagan was a private citizen no more, but spoke as the 40th President of the United States.
The business of our nation goes forward. These United States are confronted with an economic affliction of great proportions. We suffer from the longest and one of the worst sustained inflations in our national history. We must act today in order to preserve tomorrow. And let there be no misunderstanding. We are going to begin to act beginning today. Can we solve the problems confronting us? Well, the answer is an unequivocal and emphatic yes. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, I did not take the oath I've just taken with the intention of presiding over the dissolution of the world's strongest economy. And as we renew ourselves here in our own land, we will be seen as having greater strength throughout the world. We will again be the exemplar of freedom and a beacon of hope for those who do not now have freedom.
It was an inspirational address promising a new beginning. And in fact, while still at the Capitol, President Reagan signed an executive order freezing federal hiring in the executive branch. And at a luncheon, he could announce another new beginning.
Some 30 minutes ago, the planes bearing our prisoners left Iranian airspace and are now free of Iran.
The new president and his wife paraded down Pennsylvania Avenue, riding, not walking, waving to large enthusiastic crowds who had turned out to see him. And from the reviewing stand in front of the White House, he watched his parade. Late this afternoon, Ronald Reagan literally entered the Oval Office, the power and the prestige of the presidency his, also the burdens. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, the White House.
This is Barry Sarah. It was a bittersweet moment as Jimmy Carter, private citizen, left Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington to go home to Georgia. There had been affectionate goodbyes from aides and friends who saw him off. Later, there would be some tears among staff members who accompanied him on board Air Force One. When Mr. Carter arrived home in planes, he found a big crowd waiting in drizzling rain to welcome him, perhaps triple the normal population of this little Georgia town. Also there to greet him, his mother, Miss Lillian. The famous Carter smile flashed as the former president made his way through the well-wishers. But it had been a wrenching day for Mr. Carter. An aide said he had been terribly hurt and disappointed when he was not able to announce the release of the hostages before leaving office this morning. And speaking to old friends and neighbors here, he talked about his emotions. About, for example, a conversation with the wife of a hostage before leaving Washington.
Mrs. Schaefer, who is the wife of the senior military man being held by the hostages, said to me, Mr. President, I hope someday you'll have a chance to meet my husband. And I put my arms around him, and I said, I'll be with him tomorrow, and I'll tell him you love him.
Mr. Carter's emotion showed as he described how he finally got official word of the hostages' release just before he arrived in Georgia.
I had received word officially for the first time that the aircraft carrying the 52 American hostages had cleared Iranian airspace on the first leg of a journey home, and that every one of the 52 hostages was alive, was well, and free.
Mr. Carter will fly to Germany tomorrow to see the hostages. But today, after so many months of disappointment, in a crisis that contributed to his leaving office, he was back home and finally had something to smile, even dance about. Barry Seraphin, ABC News, Plains, Georgia.
On Wall Street, the release of the hostages apparently had little effect. But there are some analysts who think there was disappointment over a lack of specifics in President Reagan's speech, and the market today was down more than 20 points.
Billboard Brothers, one moment, please. Good morning. Maxwell House's coffee to relax with. Maxwell House will brighten up your day. Maxwell House. Please hold. Good to the last drop, Maxwell House.
Relax with the great taste of Maxwell House coffee. Always good to the last drop.
I can connect you now. Thank you for waiting. Good to the last drop, Maxwell House.
Outside, the Canon NP200 may look like any small copier, but inside there's a world of difference, a world of micronics, where 20 copies a minute are not only possible, but made reliable with a microcomputer. Fiber optics precisely defines your image, and a toner projection system gives you clear copies on virtually any paper. Up to 11 by 17, compact in size and price, the Canon NP200 is definitely worth looking into.
There are many medications for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. Which one is right for you? For years, Maalox has been recommended most by doctors. Now, the antacid ingredients in here, plus an extra ingredient, are in Maalox Plus tablets. Really pleasant tasting and effective. And Maalox Plus tablets also come in this handy pocket pack that keeps them fresh and sanitary. Maalox Plus for acid indigestion or heartburn relief. But don't just take my word for it. Try Maalox Plus tablets. You'll find you can't do better.
The final release of the hostages today, after 444 days of waiting, unleashed a wave of stored-up emotions. Communities across the nation, church bells and sirens rang out the news of their freedom, and in the homes of the families of the former hostages, there were toasts, hugs, kisses, and tears of relief. John Martin reports.
New York, at Times Square, thousands of light bulbs flashed the message. At a construction site on Madison Avenue, the hard hats who had been counting the days put up a sign. Thank God, it read, they're free at last, never again. At a cathedral, they began ringing the bells. And there were echoes all across the country. Meanwhile, the families of the hostages had been watching television, but waiting for the telephone. In Bellevue, Nebraska, Paul Needham's father answered a call from the State Department's Iran Working Group.
They are in the air.
Okay. In Oak Creek, Wisconsin, friends put up a poster thanking God for bringing Marine Guard Kevin Hermaning home. His mother, Barbara Tim, seemed overwhelmed.
I felt none of the joy or the jubilation that I felt the other night. I just felt total relief. Thank God. They're in the air. They're free.
Now they are free.
In Cudahy, Wisconsin, Richard Hermaning heard the word and knew his son and the country was finally free.
America is still prevailing in this whole thing because everybody cares and nobody's lost support for the hostages.
In San Diego, Dorothea Moorfield was cutting a cake for a throng of people in her home. She had become a leader, helping hostage families keep their nerve. Now it was over.